easy go.
Hey guys, wanted to bring another video to you. Wanted to get into the top 5 reasons why Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is my favorite Star Wars movie. Let's go ahead and get into it with reason number 5 as to why it's the best in my opinion. Okay guys, reason number 5 why Revenge of the Sith is my favorite Star Wars movie would have to be just the transition and the struggle that we see in Anakin throughout this movie. You know, he starts off with having these dreams and these visions. You know, it was an ability of his that he had since a young child, was to see visions of the future, and it really got to him along the way. You know, he would see the visions of his mother's death, and then when he went to her and wasn't able to save her, you know, it really messed with him. And then when he started having the visions of Padme dying during childbirth, it really started to mess with him, and we kind of see this transition and this struggle for Anakin all throughout the movie, and it just, to me, it just shows the side of Darth Vader that you didn't get to see in the previous movies. You know, because of this struggle that Anakin was going through, he just couldn't stay connected to the light side. You know, he was scared. He was scared that he was going to lose Padme like he had lost his mother, and it really messed with his head as far as his emotions. And you can see even in the movie when he's going through this with his mother, he goes through so many different emotions, because when he loses her, he loses his mind with anger, and he goes off and just annihilates the Sand People. So it's one of the first times that we see him go to the dark side, but it's also one of the first times he demonstrates a true power that he has when he's with the dark side of the Force. But this is one of the best parts of this movie to me, just because it does show a more emotional and more in-depth side of why Darth Vader ended up being the way that he was, because of the experiences that he had throughout this movie. Alright guys, reason number 4 for me why this movie is the best of the Star Wars movies has got to be the way Palpatine was able to manipulate everybody kind of behind the scenes. You know, obviously throughout the whole movie, he's manipulating Anakin and kind of working him the way he wants to work him, because he knows the power that Anakin has, and he wants to turn him to the dark side. You know, he knows that there's a struggle that Anakin's going through with worrying about Padme dying. So he explains to him in this part of the movie, you know, that he knows the way to keep from dying because of what he learned from his master. And so he knows that he can use that to play to the weakness of Anakin right now. So that's one example of how Palpatine was really working behind the scenes. And, you know, as the movie goes on, he just continues to work on Anakin. But the whole time that he's working on Anakin, he is also working on, you know, combating the Jedi. And that's something that, you know, you don't notice, and the Jedi didn't even notice until a good way through the movie, that this whole time Palpatine has been working the Jedi Council and working the Senate and everything until he has complete power, and by that point it's too late for the Jedi. So, you know, even every part of this movie behind the scenes, Palpatine is just working everybody like a puppet master, and his plan works out almost flawlessly to the way he wants it to work out. You know, he ends up getting Anakin on his side. He ends up working, you know, so that he has all the clone troopers in his power. He ends up being the head of the Senate, and they even say in the movie, you know, long after the time that he was supposed to be out of the Senate, here he is, the head of the Senate. So, you know, even they even say in the movie that the Jedi were blinded by the dark side of the Force. They were so blinded by the dark side that they didn't even know that a Sith Lord was right under their noses the whole time. So to me, reason number 4 to why this movie is so great has got to be just the way that Palpatine was able to completely manipulate everybody. Reason number 3 why this movie is the greatest to me has got to be that we get to see Order 66 enacted here. Um, kind of like what we started with in the last reason. Palpatine was working everybody so well that he had all the clone troopers in his control by this point. And then when he enacted Order 66, which was the order to destroy all the Jedi, and not only did he successfully do that, but he had everybody believing him that, the Jedi were the bad guys. He had everybody in the Senate believing that the Jedi were the bad guys. Presumably, he had the citizens, believing that the Jedi's were the bad guys. And so when he enacted this, it was one, it shows the complete mind control they had over the clone troopers. Because these guys, as we see in the Clone Wars TV show and stuff, some of these guys were friends with these Jedi and stuff. But when this order come down, they enacted it and they followed through with it without hesitation, as you see throughout this different footage here. They didn't think twice about it. They cut down these Jedi, and then, we see a fast, transition here. But this is something that went on for a long time. They cut down the Jedis, and then later on, they had the Inquisitors and stuff. But this was a big deal because all at once, the bulk of the Jedis were destroyed. And that's why you see, like, Yoda feels such a pull from the Force because of the Jedis being killed like they were. But, to see this, to me, this is one of the most emotional parts of the movie because just all of a sudden these Jedis were being destroyed. And, we're used to seeing the Jedi being strong and powerful and in control. But when this order come down, there was little they could do to stop it because of the fact that the Jedi were so trusting of not only the clone troopers and things of that nature, but they thought they had control. And this kind of shows you too some of the mindset of the Jedi is that they thought they were in control. They thought they had complete control of their situation, and they felt the Force and they were in tune with the Force. So they didn't think something like this could happen without them knowing. But that goes back to tell you how in control Palpatine was behind the scenes and manipulating everybody. That most of the Jedi weren't able to do anything to stop this. There were very few Jedi that got away, and even after that, there were many more of them that got hunted down afterwards. So to me, this is one of the big parts of this movie. It's one of the best parts of the movie because it is an emotional part of the movie. But Order 66, Anakin takes out the younglings. It's crazy. Reason number 2 for me why Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars movie ever would have to be the fight scenes. I mean, these saber battles that we have in this movie are pretty awesome. The first one, probably one of the shorter ones, would be the battle with Mace Windu versus the Emperor. And this scene is just the first time we really get to see what the Emperor can do and what Mace Windu can do. And in my opinion, you clearly can see most of this battle that Mace Windu's pretty outmatched when it comes to the Emperor. And I think even the points in this fight when it looks like Mace Windu may have the upper hand is really just the Emperor kind of baiting him into his plan, which was he was gonna use this situation as a way to help turn Anakin to the dark side. So Mace Windu puts up a decent fight, but I think the Emperor really shows his power in this fight, and we kind of get a taste of what he can do. And he really manipulates the situation to use it for, his motives, which are to help turn Anakin to the dark side. So that's kind of what I got out of this fight, but it is a great fight. The next one to me is on a much larger scale than the Mace Windu Emperor fight. Is the duel that we've been waiting for throughout, especially the entire prequel series, but if not the entire series, and that was to see uh, Master Yoda fight the Emperor. And here you really get a taste for the power of both of these guys. Both of them are old. Yoda's in the 900s. The Emperor's probably 60 plus at this point. But you see when they're using the Force, it's amazing to see what they can do. Not only are their abilities with a lightsaber, unparalleled from what we've seen, but their knowledge of the Force and the ways that they use the Force in this battle are just amazing. I mean, the videography in this scenes are awesome. Uh, just this whole sequence to me is one of the best fight sequences in all of Star Wars. I mean, say what you want about they didn't have the technology and stuff that they had in these prequels, but even, there were a lot of great fight scenes in these prequels. But to me, the fight scenes in this movie is one of the things that really make it one of the best and the best in my opinion. This fight scene here, you really get an idea for what they can do in the Force. Both these guys are just going at it, and they're just. I think there's parts in this where you can see that the Emperor thought that he was just, way above Yoda, and he finds out that he wasn't. I mean, just like right there, the look on his face when he realizes that, Yoda has the power that he does, it kind of surprises him. And then here you get the scene with them and the lightning when Yoda's holding back the lightning, and you can kind of get the feeling that the Emperor knows that he's maybe not met his match, but they are, he's not going to overpower Yoda like he thought. So this is a great battle. Now, to me, the best in this movie, and probably the best lightsaber battle of all time, in my opinion, would be the Obi-Wan versus Anakin. The way they use a lightsaber throughout this battle, to me, is just amazing. I mean, and the fact when you look at the making of the movie and whatnot, that these two guys, they put in the time to learn the choreography and do this stuff themselves. They said there was very rarely that they ever had to use the stunt doubles, because these guys were so wanting to be involved and they wanted to do this stuff and they learned this stuff, that this scene here is just amazing to me. And these two guys, as a Star Wars fan, I can appreciate the time and effort that they put into this fight scene. There were things they did here that I'm sure when the guys originally watched the original Star Wars, they would have never imagined having a lightsaber battle like this. And they say when, you hear George Lucas talk, when he did the lightsaber battles in the old movies, he knew that the technology hadn't caught up to what he envisioned, and he said this fight right here was what he envisioned for the lightsaber battles. They showed that, it takes hours for every minute of this scene as far as the work put in, not only by the actors, but by, the guys behind, with the CGI stuff and everything. The music in this scene is amazing. This whole scene right here, to me, sums up what Star Wars is. If I was ever to try to get somebody to want to like Star Wars, this is the scene that I would show them, because to me, this is the greatest lightsaber battle ever. And now we've got to it, guys. The number one reason to me why Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars movie of all time would be the fact that we get to see the rise of Darth Vader. Darth Vader is my favorite character in all of Star Wars, and throughout this movie we see Anakin's struggle and his transformation, but we get to see when Darth Vader becomes Darth Vader. And to me, that's the number one thing that makes this movie the best movie of the Star Wars franchise. You see almost everything get taken from Anakin. He loses the love of his life. He loses his best friend and his brother in Obi-Wan. And then he loses his legs. He almost loses his life. And he almost loses his entire self throughout this process. He was fully manipulated by Palpatine. Palpatine had all this in order. I mean, he had everything ready to go, and you just see the pain that Anakin goes through to become Darth Vader. And once he's Darth Vader, it kind of changes his whole outlook on life, because they talk about how Darth Vader felt as though he was basically in a prison for the rest of his life, because he was locked into this suit that he needed, this apparatus to live. And at this point, he doesn't know it yet, but he's lost everything. So throughout this series, you learn why he is the way he is, but the fact that we get to see Darth Vader rise and become who he is, to me, is one of the greatest parts of Star Wars ever. But to me, it's what makes this movie one of the best movies, and to me, it's the number one reason why it's the best movie. The scene here, the first time you hear that sound of Darth Vader breathe, you know the whole universe of Star Wars had changed at that point. And then here, Darth Vader, the first thing he asked about is Padme. That was the love of his life. Everything that happened to him was because of his love for Padme. And so when he finds out that Padme's dead, one, he feels betrayed by the Emperor, because the Emperor was supposed to teach him and tell him, and he told him if he come to the dark side that he would be able to save her. And then he wasn't able to save her, and then the Emperor tells him that he killed her, and you just see the display of his power here when he's so enraged by that he nearly destroys this entire room. I mean, he destroys the robots, and he takes those first steps. So to me, that's the number one reason what makes this movie the best of the entire Star Wars franchise. So guys, there it is. That's my rundown of the top 5 reasons why Episode 3 is the best Star Wars movie of all time. You may not agree. A lot of you probably won't agree. If you don't agree with me, put down in the comments, what is your favorite Star Wars movie? What's your favorite parts of Star Wars? List them down below. Maybe we'll make a video about them. But if you can, guys, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, here on YouTube, Clay Bizzle Gaming. Like, subscribe, comment, and we'll catch you guys on the next video. I really appreciate you watching. Easy go.